at my birthday party, so I feel like I introduced her to you.
Yes, well, yeah, I heard about, because I had left your birthday party before.
The world of celebrity culture is fueled by illusion, performance, and the blurring of boundaries between character and person. But every now and then, one raw sentence has the power to shatter years of speculation, rewrite narratives, and remind us how fragile the line between truth and fantasy really is. And this is exactly what happened when Sam Heughan, the Scottish actor whose name had for more than a decade been entwined with that of his Outlander co-star Katrina Balf, sat under the bright lights of a primetime broadcast called Inside the Frame in a special episode aptly titled Truth Legacy, a program designed to strip away masks and confront long-standing rumors, buried truths, and even those ineffable moments where memory and mythology collide. Millions of viewers tuned in, expecting perhaps some gentle clarifications, witty anecdotes, or the same evasive charm with which actors often handle invasive questions. Yet what they received instead was a moment of brutal honesty that reverberated across the globe, a sentence that collapsed years of fanfiction, interviews dissected frame by frame, and the imagined love story of two people who, on screen, had become cultural archetypes of passion, loyalty, and soul-deep devotion. For years, Sam and Katrina had been adored by fans not only as Jamie and Claire Fraser, the time-defying lovers whose story anchored Outlander, but as supposed off-screen soulmates. Entire online communities devoted themselves to decoding their interactions, their red carpet glances, the way his hand lingered at the small of her back during award shows, or the way she leaned into his shoulder in candid photographs. And countless blogs and fan accounts insisted that such intimacy could not be fabricated, that the boundary between acting and lived feeling must surely have dissolved somewhere along the way. These speculations became a cottage industry of hope and projection, because for many people, Jamie and Claire were not just characters but ideals, embodiments of love that endures despite centuries, war, and personal loss, and thus the actors themselves became vessels into which millions poured their longing for proof that such a love might exist in reality. For over a decade, neither Sam nor Katrina publicly confirmed nor denied the rumors, and their silence allowed imaginations to run unchecked, perhaps deliberately, perhaps out of a desire to protect their own private lives. But whatever the reason, the result was the same. A global audience convinced that the chemistry they saw on screen must be mirrored in the quiet corners of life beyond the cameras. And then, in that studio under the harsh glare of stage lights, Sam broke the silence with words delivered not in anger, not in defensiveness, but with a kind of measured calmness that made them all the more devastating. I know this is going to be shocking, but I have to tell you the truth. I have never had any romantic feelings for Katrina Balf. The camera did not cut away. There was no artifice, no editing trick to soften the blow. The host, Elena Monroe, sat stunned, her poised journalistic exterior faltering for several long seconds as the weight of the admission sank in, before she repeated slowly, almost incredulously, "You never loved her?" "Not at all." Sam shook his head with a calmness that suggested he had rehearsed this moment countless times in his mind. "No," he answered firmly. "We had a strong connection as two actors who found each other in character, but in real life there was no love, no secret relationship, nothing." His voice carried no bitterness, only a sober finality, as if to suggest that the performance was sacred precisely because it was not muddied by real-life romance. Yet the declaration created a fissure that rippled instantly beyond the studio walls. Elena, maintaining composure, pressed further. But Sam, millions of fans believed there was something more, something real beyond the set. "Do you understand that?" Sam looked directly into the camera, lips pursed, eyes open with a frankness that carried both weariness and compassion. "I know," he admitted, "and I've been silent for too long. Perhaps I should have spoken years ago, but I didn't want to hurt anyone, especially Katrina. People fell in love with Jamie and Claire, not with Sam and Katrina, and I thought if I spoke, I'd break that magic for them." That night, as the broadcast ended, the internet combusted into an inferno of hashtags, think pieces, reaction videos, and fan wars. On Twitter, Hashtag Sam Heughan and hashtag Outlander Shock trended globally within minutes, breaking into the top 5 hashtags worldwide. Social media fractured into two primary camps, the disappointed and the realistic. The disappointed spoke with voices cracked by betrayal. "I believed in that look for 10 years. She looked at him like he was the world, and you're telling me it was nothing." Others asked plaintively, if there was nothing between them, then what was that look in the wedding episode? What about those unscripted smiles? Was it all just acting? There was anger too. "I'm not mad that you don't love her. I'm mad that you let us believe it for a decade." And interwoven through it all were currents of empathy and sadness for Katrina. How must she feel? Hearing this, did she agree to stay silent too? Did she carry the burden of the rumors as well? On the other side stood the realistic camp, voices grounded, if slightly weary of years of obsession. They are actors, not characters. It's time people separate fiction from reality. Some offered pragmatic kindness. "It's not Sam's fault. We just imagined it. He owes us nothing." Yet in the clash of camps, what united them all was the recognition that something cherished had ended. Not the show itself, which would continue, but the illusion, the dream that the actors were secretly living out the love story of Jamie and Claire in real life. Meanwhile, Katrina Balf's silence added layers of mystery and intrigue to the storm. 3 days after the interview, she posted a single Instagram story, a black and white photograph of a gray Glasgow sky, vast and empty, with no caption, no explanation. To many fans, it spoke volumes. The quiet resignation of someone tired of speculation, the melancholy of a woman defined by rumors not of her making. The press attempted to contact her, hungry for comment, for confirmation, for contradiction, but her representatives issued only a single statement. Katrina has no comment at this time. This silence, more than anything, fanned the flames. For those who clung to hope, it suggested she might be quietly disagreeing with Sam. For others, it was a dignified refusal to participate in the circus. But to all, it revealed the human cost of living beneath constant projection, of carrying other people's fantasies as though they were your own life. In the days that followed, analysts, critics, and cultural commentators weighed in. Some argued that Sam's confession was long overdue, a necessary unmasking that freed both him and Katrina from years of parasocial entanglement. Others lamented the timing, suggesting it was cruel to Katrina or disrespectful to fans whose emotional investment had been, at least in part, encouraged by the actors' ambiguous silences at conventions, interviews, and press tours. Psychology experts were invited onto talk shows to discuss parasocial relationships, explaining how audiences project their desires onto celebrities, especially when a story like Outlander blurs the boundary between fantasy and real life by demanding intense emotional performances over many years. There were reminders, too, of history. Elizabeth Taylor and Richard Burton, Angelina Jolie and Brad Pitt, where on-screen chemistry and off-screen romance did intertwine, reinforcing the belief that such overlaps are not only possible but expected. Against such examples, Sam's flat denial seemed almost incomprehensible to those who had spent years insisting that the magic was real. Meanwhile, younger fans began reframing the moment as a lesson in media literacy, arguing that the collapse of this illusion could empower audiences to separate actors from characters more responsibly in the future. The story also rippled into discussions about gender and labor, how Katrina's experience of being constantly defined through her supposed relationship with Sam represented the ways in which women in Hollywood are often deprived of full individuality, their identities tethered to men whether they like it or not. Feminist writers questioned why her silence was demanded, why she had to answer questions about her co-star in nearly every interview, and why audiences seemed to value her primarily as one half of an imagined pair rather than as an acclaimed actress in her own right. The cultural storm illuminated more than celebrity gossip. It exposed the hunger of audiences for timeless love stories and the often unconscious cruelty of demanding that actors shoulder such burdens indefinitely. As the weeks unfolded, Sam himself released a follow-up statement via social media, more measured than the broadcast but equally firm. He thanked fans for their support, emphasized his respect for Katrina, and repeated that their relationship had always been one of deep friendship and professional trust. "She is one of the most extraordinary women I have ever worked with," he wrote, "and I will always be grateful for what we created together as Jamie and Claire. But it was just that, creation, not reality. Please, for both our sakes, allow us to be separate from the story we told." His plea resonated with some, yet for others it only deepened their grief. For Katrina, her continued silence became both shield and stage, for in the absence of words, the audience projected again, this time onto her silence, imagining anger, heartbreak, relief, or even complicit agreement. The irony was cruel. The very dynamic Sam sought to dismantle, of people reading into their private lives what they wanted to see, persisted, now magnified by his attempt at closure. The episode demonstrated in stark relief how the mythologies of popular culture become inseparable from the actors who embody them, and how audiences, desperate for living proof of ideals, resist relinquishing their projections even when confronted with truth. At its core, the revelation was less about whether Sam loved Katrina and more about the universal human longing for evidence that the love stories we cherish in fiction might be real somewhere, that such intensity might exist beyond pages and screens. When Sam said no, when Katrina stayed silent, it was not just the collapse of a ship, but the collapse of a dream, that perhaps Jamie and Claire could live off the page through the actors who embodied them. And so the internet argued, wept, mocked, analyzed, and ultimately moved forward, but not without scars, for the story served as a mirror held up to the parasocial nature of fandom and to the fragile humanity of those thrust unwillingly into fantasies not of their making. In the end, what lingered was not just Sam's words, nor Katrina's silence, but the uncomfortable recognition that sometimes the deepest heartbreak comes not from lovers, but from strangers whose lives we
before she went in. Have you ever had someone do that for you?
No.
Will you consider doing it now?
I would love that.
You've also talked.
Katrina Balf's silence in the aftermath of Sam Heughan's confession became the centerpiece of an already roaring storm, for in the world of celebrity culture, absence often speaks louder than words, and her decision not to offer an immediate statement only added to the sense of mystery, heartbreak, and unresolved tension. Fans and commentators alike filled the void with speculation, declaring that she was heartbroken, that she felt betrayed by Sam's public distancing, and that perhaps she remained quiet in order to preserve her dignity in the face of a global narrative that was already spiraling beyond her control. Old clips and interviews began resurfacing across fan forums, TikTok edits, and YouTube compilations, moments that seemed almost unbearable in their intimacy. The behind-the-scenes footage from Season 3 where Sam gazed at Katrina while she threw her head back in laughter, the interview in which Katrina admitted softly, "Sam has always been the one who made me feel safe," or Sam's own words in a promotional appearance where he confessed, "Without Katrina, I couldn't be Jamie." These fragments, once cherished as evidence of an extraordinary bond, were now re-examined through the prism of doubt and disbelief. Online communities dissected every look, every brush of hands, every pause between words, as if truth might be discovered in the micro-expressions and gestures missed the first time. Inevitably, the question arose and echoed through countless threads and comment sections. Did you truly never love her, Sam? Or are you in denial, unable to face feelings that once existed but are now too complicated to admit? For some, his denial felt like self-protection, a man drawing a firm line to escape the suffocating fantasy projected upon him. For others, it seemed an act of betrayal, rewriting of history that erased the depth of their perceived connection. 3 weeks after the explosive broadcast, whispers began to circulate from behind the scenes, reported by sources close to the production team of Inside the Frame. According to one insider, Sam and Katrina had shared a private phone call that lasted nearly 2 hours. The details of what was said remain tightly guarded, known only to them, but the mere existence of the call reignited fan speculation. What did they say? Did they argue? Did they mourn the friendship altered by public scrutiny? Or did they, in quieter tones, acknowledge feelings long hidden from the spotlight? Shortly afterwards, Sam posted a cryptic status on social media. "There are truths not to protect yourself, but to free others." These words were received as a riddle, interpreted differently by everyone who encountered them. Some fans suggested that Sam had indeed loved Katrina once, but chose not to admit it publicly out of respect for her private life, given that she was now married and a mother. Others believed he was trying to release both himself and Katrina from the weight of expectations, to dismantle a narrative that had controlled their careers and their identities for far too long. In this ambiguity, the truth remained elusive, yet the emotions it stirred were undeniably real, both for the actors involved and the millions who had tethered themselves to their imagined love story. As the months passed, the initial firestorm gradually dimmed, though the embers of fascination never fully went out. A year later, both Sam and Katrina's lives looked different, transformed by the passage of time and perhaps shaped by the aftermath of that single televised moment. Sam continued to work as an actor, but also allowed his personal life to unfold more openly, stepping into a public relationship with a Swedish pianist, whose presence in his life brought a sense of groundedness and renewal. Katrina, meanwhile, leaned into her directorial ambitions, appearing less frequently on screen but garnering respect in creative circles for her artistic vision. The once unshakable Jamie and Claire fandom no longer roared with the same force. It had quietened, softened, yet it remained alive in memory, a cherished chapter in the lives of those who had built communities around it. Fan forums that once buzzed with speculation began to resemble nostalgia